Welcome to the Evolving Love webinar. The title of the webinar is called What to Do About Disinterest and Turn Off in Your Relationships. And I added to that for people with attachment theory, although that could apply to just about everyone. So welcome everyone, welcome to the webinar, and welcome to Brian and Jennifer. It's great to have you guys. I love you. You're one of the people that, you're one of the couples who, I don't know, I don't know if it's really the right thing to say that you work really hard on your relationship, because I don't know if you believe in working hard, but you definitely do some work and you do some good work. And I think as a result, you have a lot to offer. And you also like to geek out on relationships, what makes you some of my favorite people in the world, because I don't know too many people who love examining relationships and examining the ways that people connect with each other and why and how what are these relationships made of, and how do you solve these different problems that keep on arising? So today we're going to be talking about disinterest and turn off, and this is something that's really close to me because I identify as at least having 50% of me that's avoidant, and another 50% that's secure, and my wife Paget is at least 50, or used to be at least 50% anxious and 50% secure. And at the beginning of our relationship, this caused a lot of problems. But at the same time, we had a very solid relationship. So we just kept on doing this work. We just kept on telling people, wow, it must be stubborn just to keep on trying. But we do believe that we can solve this, or we can grow this into something that's much more secure. And then our son was born, and somehow, because she had this extra anchor, she became even more secure. That threw me off. I became very insecure, and I had to do like a few years of regaining my security, growing as a father, becoming a new person, essentially. So I've grown a lot over the years, and I have to say, I've lived, I'm here, I can talk about it, and I have also a lot of good things to say, a lot of good things to share, and I hope that today everyone who's on this show will get to learn a thing or two, or find a few things useful, at least one or two, and some of these things you'll hear, and it won't really hit you right away. You'll have to either listen to the webinar again or read more about attachment theory, and some things will click over time. So I recommend you watch the webinar maybe more than once if you have the time, or just listen to it, and then do some more research, because attachment theory it's a theory. It's a concept. It's a model, and as a model, it's not reality, and so you can only apply it so far. And the point is if you apply it just right, it's like a tool, and the tool will help you have more graceful relationships, which is what I wish to everyone. So there it is. So I'm going to hand the mic, or the stage, or the video to you two, and tell us a little bit more about you and what you're going to present today.
Yeah. I just want to say that one of the things that made me excited to do this is that, you know, we've had a standing date with you, Philippe, to have this conversation about attachment theory in particular, and these anxious and avoidant patterns. And we thought to ourselves, we could just be greedy and be alone and have a really, really wild, amazing, juicy conversation all on our own, having a great time. But why not actually take the inside and put it on the outside, and actually have this conversation be publicized, so that all of you guys can voyeur our conversation about attachment theory, about turn on, so that you can have some of the fun alongside us. So this is like our standing date with Philippe to go into something that all of us have been really geeking out on. And what we're finding is that applying this theory and a lot of the other principles that Brian and I do when we work with couples has been incredibly informative. It's like people are like, oh, I finally feel understood. You know, I finally get why I'm responding and reacting to my partner the way I am. So it's got a lot of explanatory power. But there are ways that I think that all three of us would have taken it a lot farther than some of the research. So I encourage you both to see what's out there and to allow some of the things that we share with you here to plant, you know, a psychoactive seed for you. That you allow this little seed, if you hear a new idea or a new aha, you allow it to grow inside your mind, inside your psyche, and perhaps shift or change something about the way you relate. So that's really what we're about. So come voyeur with us as we have this conversation with Philippe, one of our favorite human beings who, Philippe, you are one of the most wise people we know about love, sex, relationship, turn on, seduction. So I just can't think of anyone better. So let's talk, Brian, about what are we all going to get? What are we going to learn today? What are we going to do?
Well, what I thought, and one of the reasons why we're so excited to be here with you, Philippe, is some of the thoughts and questions that you had, and I just wanted to share some of the kind of green room talk with the rest of the people. Some of the questions you were talking about that we really wanted to cover. I mean, first we want to just explore a little bit about what even attachment theory is. What is a secure attachment? What is insecure attachment? Anxious, avoidant. You may have heard these words, or you may know the theory very well, but we just want to briefly go over that. We also want to talk about how to create connection, particularly with an avoidant, even when they're really distant. That it can be challenging if you're in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant pattern, and you can feel like you can't even get in there. So how do you do that? Also, if you are avoidant, or even if you're not, how do you discover your own emotional pace of connection versus space, and how do you share with your partner about it in a way where they're not going to get all freaked out and hurt their feelings
or turned off? Because remember, some of what we're wanting to talk about is like creating and cultivating that turn on. What do you do when your relationships start to go stale? Right?
Totally. And then also there's like a somatic dance of each of the types, and how do you move towards more and more secure attachment as you're dancing with these patterns. And then of course we want to tell you about an extraordinary event that's coming up in San Francisco, and we've also got a free set of videos and audios to give you during this webinar that you can use to literally retrain your nervous system to have more secure attachment patterns and relationships. So we're going to give you those as well.
Yeah, so let's, just so that we're all on the same page, everybody listening, all of us, I thought, Philippe, that let's kind of just give them the lowdown, like our like thumbnail version of what is attachment theory. Basically the theory, if you haven't heard of it before, and one of the reasons we're doing this webinar is that everyone on our Facebook messages and the couples are just talking about this theory. So we figured, since it's such a hot topic, let's actually talk about it together. And it's really, the theory divides you into three different categories, right? There's the securely attached people, right? And these people with these secure attachments are, people that fundamentally know that they're loved and that they deserve love and that they're good at loving others. They call it a secure attachment primarily because of how they attach to their parents, or to their primary caregivers growing up. And if you had a secure attachment, you weren't insecure about the love that you were giving or receiving between, let's say, your parents or your caregivers, then you're considered secure attachment. And these people are likely to have really healthy, happy love relationships. But that's just the first category. And sadly, it's actually exceedingly rare. People that are securely attached. There's actually way more of the other two types. But that secure attachment tends to happen in those first 7 years, from baby to, those first few years when you're just starting to kind of get a little bit more autonomy. And it's really, if you answered the question, am I loved and lovable? And you were absolutely confident and had no hesitation, then you're securely attached. And if at any point in those first 7 years developmentally, you questioned it, am I loved? Am I lovable? Do I deserve love? Then you're what we would call insecurely attached. And there's a continuum of that. So you might have just questioned it a little bit, or you might totally disbelieve that you have any right to be loved or that you're lovable at all. And so that breeds the other two types, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Just wanted to add a quick thing. So part of the theory states that that a lot happens in the first 12 months, because when they did the very first experiment to try to figure out what attachment theory was, they did it on 12-month-old babies, and they already could see a particular particular type of attachment. The names were slightly different, but it's essentially the same thing. Already at 12 months, it was visible. Parts of it, they've also proven that it's at least partially hereditary. It can be transmitted.
Yeah.
Hereditary?
Yeah, hereditary. Yeah, you got it.
Sorry, I'm French Canadian, and so that gets me once in a while. So that's partially also, and also they found that there's a high percentage that the baby or the child will take the primary care primary caregiver's attachment style. So if the person you identified most with is somebody who's secured, then you have much more likely to be secure or insecure, depending on what it was. So those are a few things. Another thing I wanted to add is that and I'll speak to it a little bit more. There's somebody who's I define somebody who's secure as someone who has good emotional balance. So if this person took their emotional balance and took it and translated it into a body, they would be really good dancers. They would not fall on their face too often. They might slip here and there, and they would get right up. They have good resilience as dancers, as emotional dancers. They have good resilience. They don't fall easily. They're not too stiff. They move well, and they recover well. And if you're a secure person, you probably identify with that. You're like, oh, somebody said something and it bothered you, and then you sort of recovered really quickly. Somebody who's insecure will have a harder time with that. So let's go into the insecure people.
Yeah, because this metaphor, I think, is going to be great for us to use to kind of explain what the insecure looks like on a kind of somatic level. I love that, Philippe. It's absolutely true. And those first few years of your life really have a lot to do with how secure, insecure you are. So they really have done a lot of research here. So as I'm starting to describe these other two, just see if you, all of you listening, just see if you can notice yourself, see where you think you lie in these three categories. Because I think it'll be really helpful if you can kind of identify where you lean. You may not always be any one of these, but if you lean towards one, you're predominantly one, it can be valuable for you, the stuff we're going to share. So let's talk about the anxious type. So there are insecure people that tend towards anxious, and these people fundamentally fear abandonment, right? Here's that you're doubting that you're loved, and now both types doubt that they're loved, but an anxious type doubts that they're loved and assumes that they're going to be rejected, right? They continually try to close the gap between themselves and those they love, and often leave their loved ones with feeling that they are needy and smothering, like engulfed. Sometimes they use the word infuse, that they fuse with their partner or merge. Yeah. And so someone who has this anxious pattern might think that love is threatened, when their partner is just expressing like normal, healthy autonomy, like, let's say, wanting to spend a weekend apart, or, having different interests, like different hobbies. Oh, they'll search for reasons that might be them being rejected, right? Maybe wanting to sleep without touching on a hot night. They would look at normal, healthy behaviors and think, oh, I must be
it's my fault,
unloved, and they react in fear. Even not being in the mood from time to time. If you have a partner that they're not in the mood, if you're anxious and really in your pattern, you're going to interpret just a healthy ebb and flow in a normal relationship. Sometimes you're in the mood, sometimes you're not, as they're rejecting me, I'm not worthy of their love, I'm not lovable, and you're off to the dance, the races of anxious patterning.
Yeah, and so in a somatic terms, this would feel like the needy is sort of like leaning in. There's this sort of leaning in, and also it can also be interpreted as a little bit more discombobulated, very easily falling on the ground. If anxious people were dancers, right? They could get back up, but they would also kind of fall back, and there would be a lot of leaning towards. And so because I'm very somatic, I interpret somebody who's needy with me as sort of like leaning in towards me. And I go, I lean out because I'm avoidant. So now we're going to go to the avoidant.
Oh yeah, let's get into this one. Philippe, maybe you've heard this before, or maybe this sounds like you. I don't know. So insecurely attached people who also questioned, am I loved or lovable? Remember, they're having the same hesitation and questioning of that at a very early age. Is just the patterning has them respond very differently. They're afraid, just like the anxious is, about whether they're loved and lovable, but they're afraid enough that they would rather go away and get away from love and not even risk being hurt. And that somehow feels safer. So an avoidant, I mean, the word is fairly explicit, but an avoidant fundamentally fears being engulfed by their partner, right? They doubt that if they can, be loved fully, and create some distance between themselves and those that they loved, that often leaving their loved ones with a feeling that they're aloof. Like, so if they're wanting any space at all, right, they feel aloof by their anxious partner. And if they don't leave space, they feel engulfed, right? And so someone who has this avoidant pattern might think that freedom and individuality, for instance, is threatened, every time their partner wants to express what we would call just normal, healthy closeness, right? So, an avoidant, see if any of this relates to you. And again, it's a continuum, it's a spectrum. But an avoidant might be triggered if you wanted to interrupt their work with a little kiss, and say, oh, let me give you a kiss. And they're like, oh, why are you engulfed?
Yeah, like, what do you want? Do I have to do anything about this? I'm gonna ignore it. Yes.
And that could just yeah.
If my wife if Paget was there, she would just totally nod. She'd be like, "Oh, I have to walk on eggshells. I have to approach really slowly." And we're gonna get into that in a minute. Parts of it too is a couple of things I wanted to say about this.
Yeah, sure.
Anxious people are more likely to blame themselves, and avoidants are more likely to blame others.
The others, yeah. We sometimes call that reactive and repressive, where the repressives are the anxious, where they assume it's all them. They go inside, repress, internalize, and the avoidants externalize, and they'll blame you.
But at least they agree on whose fault it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also creates really out of balance relationships.
Yeah.
The second piece is I wanted to say it's you don't need to have had a fucked up childhood in order to be avoidant or anxious.
Yeah. One example that I've given is you could produce, just to show you how easy it is to develop this patterning. There you are, 20 months old, and you're about to reach for your mom. And so you're reaching for her to kind of give you attention or love in that moment, and the phone rings, and she turns away from you in that moment to answer the phone, right? And something like that sounds innocuous, but in that moment, you don't have any way of interpreting complexity of that situation, except that there was something that you wanted that was supposed to give you love, called your mother, and they were unavailable for you in that moment and turned away from you. So clearly you're not loved. So just so you know that, if you're not relating to this because you didn't have an unhealthy childhood, or you weren't traumatized, it actually doesn't take much to develop this insecurity, right?
And it's a response. It's not the treatment that you were given as a child. It was your response to that treatment. And it can develop at any level of intensity. Oftentimes people with severe childhoods can have healthy, secure attachment styles.
So here's what I want to do really quick, Philippe, before we dive in deeper, is I want to actually take a poll, all of you guys on the line. So I'm going to start a poll. So you'll see in the right-hand corner, if you are secure, go ahead and click that one. If you think you're secure, and this is just your predominance. And then if you think you're insecure and have an anxious patterning, go ahead and click that one. And if you're insecure and you have an avoidant pattern, click that one. We just want to see who's on the line. Like, just kind of tell us, spill the beans with us on where you think you're at. I want to share the poll. I don't know if you can see it too, Philippe, but we're
getting play too? I can't. I don't think I can. I can't click anything.
Oh, if you click the poll, it's okay. I'll say. So far, we've got 20% of you.
No, I see it, but I can't play.
Oh, you can't play? It won't let you play? Oh, well, we'll add his score in. So far, we've got about 29% of you saying secure, 43% of you saying anxious. Oh, wait, it just changed. 38% of you saying
It's like
anxious.
watching the elections.
Yeah. And then 25% of you, maybe now 22, saying that you're avoidant.
Are people changing their answers?
Yeah, and it's changing because more people are responding.
Right,
But
right.
clearly we've got some people that are secure on the line and some people that are each of the three types. So we're going to talk about what is it like to be in a relationship if you're either anxious and avoidant. How do you deal with these dynamics?
And guess what? Guess what? Avoidants are not on the call.
Yeah,
Like,
they don't
not
come.
very many. Maybe there's one. Everybody else, they're just like, oh, it's your problem.
Yeah.
We have a webinar called "Why It's Your Partner's Fault." The avoidance, I'll go to that one. But the other thing is, I definitely identify primarily as securely attached. Although I recognize both anxious and avoidant behavior and patterning and responses all over my relationships, including with Jennifer. And I tend to, I feel the anxious pattern ones more often than the avoidant, but I totally feel them both. So even though I'm, primarily secure and, have been, for most of my adult life, dating life, it doesn't mean that those patterns don't come, and it doesn't mean that they're not painful when they do. If I succumb to one of those patterns, that moment is a crappy moment. So I was really excited to start to learn some of the stuff that we're talking about tonight to start to unwind that for myself.
And you can also kind of polarize each other in a particular direction, because if you are already a little bit insecure and you have a partner that starts to be avoidant, he could polarize, or she could polarize you into a little bit more of the anxiety. Or if you have a partner that's a little bit more anxious and you're a little insecure, they could polarize you into a little bit more of that avoidant. And that's kind of a misconception that we feel like is spread in the theory, is that you're always only one of these. And I really feel like you can be polarized. I've certainly felt like I've been in relationships where I was more anxious, and then I've been in relationships where I've been a little bit more avoidant, even though I primarily now in this relationship feel very, very, very secure, and have been for a while. But we definitely see those patterns even in our own relationship. So we'll talk about how we've dealt with all of that in ours.
Yeah, I've seen two different things happen. I've seen I've seen the polarization happen. So one person becomes avoidant, the other person sort of responds in kind, and if from a dancer perspective, that makes perfect sense, right? One person leans in, the other person leans out, and the movement continues. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an exciting movement. It doesn't mean it's a balanced one. And especially between somebody who's anxious and avoidant, that I call it the tango of anxious and avoidant. One goes forward, the other one goes back, the other one goes comes back, the other one goes away, and they do this back and forth. So that's one thing. The other thing is I've had people tell me that they normally identify as one type of insecure, but then they got together with somebody else who was even more insecure than they are. And then they became the avoidant. They started as anxious, and then they were like, wow, I felt like an avoidant because
somebody more anxious than them.
Way more anxious, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love the metaphor of the dance, because, there is a healthy version of this, because humans need both connection and space and freedom, right? Freedom and connection, right? These are both human needs. And when you dance, there's an ebb and flow. The leaning in and out, actually both parties are balanced, and yet they're still moving and dancing. And there are moments when the partner needs the space and you create the space, and then you come together, and that does look like a dance. And when you're really insecure, it's kind of more like both of you had like one too many drinks and you're kind of sloppy, and it's like, oh, whoops. And then I'm falling all over him, and he's
get off of me,
having to push me off, and then it's less of a dance and more of kind of a kerfuffle.
It's not graceful.
It's not graceful, and we want to teach you how to have more grace. And even if you have this patterning, what can we say to have you have more grace in that dance? Because we've all been there. We've all had moments. So. Right. So let's get into the kind of the juicy bits.
Wow, yeah. 25 minutes of setup. Now we can go into the depth of it. So I'm hearing you guys. I'm hearing a feedback.
Oh, a little feedback here. Let me turn down the volume. Let's see if that's better, and maybe we'll get a little closer. Sometimes that can help.
So
How's that?
I can still hear it, but we'll do our best.
Try turning down your volume.
Oh, I have a headset.
Okay.
We'll see. So the first big point that we had was, how do you create connection with an avoidant, even when they're distant? Because that's bound to happen. An avoidant will eventually feel like there's too much intimacy. They're going to want to take some space. It kind of reminds me of the men are for Mars, women are for Venus. You know, the man goes into his cave, and there was a whole book about like how to handle the woman's sort of waves. I can't recall what it was for the woman, and then the man going to his cave, and this sort of, to me that sort of defines the quintessential sort of cultural avoidant man versus the anxious woman, which is not necessarily true for everyone. I mean, it's one version, and it definitely goes both ways. You know, women are avoidant too, and I've seen plenty of them, and vice versa. And so so how do you reconnect with an avoidant? So I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'll add a few bits afterward. But I'm really curious about how you two would handle it.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the most important pieces, and attachment theory is good at saying this one thing, which is that it correctly places the responsibility for the dynamic for both people, right, on the person that's having the kind of issue. So it's easy to understand that if you feel crowded by your lover, it's more likely that you are actually insecurely avoidant than that they're crowding you. And if you feel your partner never pays enough attention to you, that it's more likely that you're actually insecure and anxious than anything your partner might be doing. So in other words, one of the first pieces that I would say about creating that connection is, don't make your happiness contingent on their behavior, right? If I'm a little more anxious and I'm with an avoidant partner, and I make my happiness contingent on whether they touched my hand, or they texted me within 5 seconds, or they cuddled me for enough time at night, like if all of my happiness is wrapped up in their behavior, that is going to definitely set off an avoidant. So as someone who's anxious, if you're dealing with that, you want to actually do something that we call self-regulation, right? Regulate your own happiness so that you are stable. Like the dancer, you're not leaning on your partner, that you're actually balanced, emotionally balanced, not requiring anything of them, but you can actually just have a great time inviting them in. And an invitation from someone who's stabilized rather than someone who's grabbing and pulling you is a lot more juicy and fun and hot and sexy than...
I like being your prop. You're your lean prop and pro prop. And it's a good role for me.
So one of the things that we have learned to do, Brian and I, that we just highly recommend, and we even have some free resources we're going to give you access to at the end. So just stay tuned, because we really want to help you, and it's longer than we want to get into just in the time we have left. But you know, we have a way to show you how do you self-regulate so that you're not making your emotional state contingent on anything that they are doing. And so, you know, what you do is you kind of fade them out and everything else out, and just notice your own reactions, and notice how much of it is really all about you and all about a fear, right? And your body will naturally regulate itself. You know, if you are bringing your mind back from the future and from catastrophizing that they might leave you, even though they're not even leaving you, all they're doing is just, you know, going about their day. If you'll just get present and really, really just fade that out and create your own sense of balance and your own sense of happiness based on you, then you're going to be the kind of partner that an avoidant or anyone is going to want to play with. So that's really one of the first pieces about
Here's
it.
Just a newsflash, perhaps. Securely attached folks, people with a secure attachment, their nervous system does not become dysregulated when they're exposed to avoidant behavior in a partner, or anxious behavior for that matter. Yeah. You may not like it, or you may not prefer it, or you may make a request to have it be different, but it doesn't actually dysregulate your nervous system. You don't feel like you aren't okay. Mm-hmm. So anytime you're feeling like you aren't okay, even though it looks like it's your partner's behavior, like the fact that they're avoidant, that's causing that, it's not. It's actually your patterning. So the first thing, like Jennifer said, is to regulate. The other thing that you can do to connect, I mean, if I was going to connect with someone who's distant and avoidant in that moment, what I'd want to connect with is their desire, their world. If you want to create connection with someone, create connection with what their world is, and their world is trying to protect their independence and their freedom and their autonomy. So I would want to show up as an ally for their independence. That would be my first move. Like, hey, can I support you in having some alone time? Or, you know, what can I serve as a block for any other people? So, you know, can I help answer calls for you so you don't have to? Can I, you know, is there anything I can do to help support your distance to get what you need?
Yeah, I love that. I just want to say one more thing, and I want to hear from Philippe. It's around that, which is, you know, you become, like, if you want to write anything down or underline something, become an ally, not an adversary, to their freedom, to their independence. Because fundamentally, like, what's going on underneath is that, you know, there are these various developmental stages that a healthy human goes through when they're young, and a healthy human realizes that they have a right to exist, and it starts there. And then they realize they have a right to need, right? And an anxious patterned person has an undeveloped right to need, so they become needy, right? But an avoidant has an undeveloped right to be independent and still belong, right? And that's a basic organismic right. Wilhelm Reich did some beautiful work on developmental psychology. And to me, if you want to get under the hood of where did this anxious avoidant patterning come from, it's an underdeveloped both right to need if you're anxious and a right to be independent and still belong. So if you had the kind of mother, let's say, that engulfed you, you didn't know that you had actually a right to be an independent being. And so you might develop avoidant patterning as one of the ways that you might deal with that, because it feels like you don't even have a right to just have a boundary around yourself. Like, this is me, I'm a self, and you're over there. And if that wasn't properly developed, then you're going to sort for evidence that everyone is thwarting your freedom. And so if you're with an avoidant, if they know you're an advocate for that, then this is like, they are going to be excited to be around you and with you. You know, this is just like point number one about this. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add to that before I say maybe one more thing about it.
Yeah, just a couple of things that came to mind. I mean, it's a lot of what I'm talking about is a lot of things I'm going to say is related to my experience and how Paget managed to learn to get me as she was becoming more secure and doing it more and more right. And I could tell the shift between her wanting to get something from me. Sometimes I still feel it, even though it's not there. But I also started to get her getting my world. And so some of the things that helped. One is when I'm in a space that when I need space, I'm either sort of fuming, I'm in a funk, something's going on for me. Usually there's emotions that are coming up, and they're coming up so slowly that it's like a slow earthquake, and it's very distracting. And so for her to approach me could actually try to jerk me away from that, what I'm trying to figure out or what's going on inside of my head. So she approaches me like a fragile flower, like somebody who can be easily disturbed, easily kind of thrown off, because I'm already fully caught up by this slow emotional upheaval that's happening. So that's one thing. The other thing is
and that's counterintuitive, Philippe, because an avoidant often looks aloof.
Right. Yeah. But
they pretend or play on the outside that they're resilient, but on the inside there's the emotional turmoil, right?
Yeah, and I often say that what can happen is that an avoidant, like, everybody feels. That's what I tell my clients. Everybody feels. Like, whether or not you know how you feel, that's emotional intelligence. That's emotional awareness and intelligence. And I suspect, and I'm not saying anything bad, even though it's going to sound like it, I suspect that avoidants are less emotionally intelligent, meaning that that reading their own emotions and other people's emotions can take longer because they haven't had as much practice being close to people. And practicing the sort of attaching, detaching, identifying the emotions and identifying the emotions in other people because they've been more distant. So less practice meaning less skill, and less skill meaning that when they're trying to read emotions and get what's going on, it takes them longer and it takes much more attention, much more emotional attention. So that's why when Padgett would approach me, instead of approaching me directly, they would kind of approach me indirectly. She'd come over and drop a glass of milk or drop some food, or like very much like I was somebody who was very sensitive and could be easily thrown off.
And drop means put down gently, right, at your side.
right. Drop. No, yeah, just gently. Or she just come right next to me and meow just gently, but without trying to take too much of my attention, especially when I'm having the hardest time, where I'm like, she really feels like I'm away. Like if she approaches me too directly, I'm just gonna react and try to push her away. So somatically, it felt very, very gentle, like gentle caresses. Versus, I need you, I want you, I want your attention. That's very intense and very direct. So much more indirect, much more graceful, and much more soft.
Yeah. Often I think in someone who's got more of the avoidant patterning, the intensity of both their own emotions and their partner's emotions is so high that they're actually oversensitive or to those. So being exposed to them has them kind of run away farther. And so when you come at somebody who's avoidant with a whole lot of like, I'm hurting, I'm tired, do this for me, I need this. It's the intensity is too much for them, and they'd much rather run away and get space, than be totally engulfed by not only their own emotions, but yours as well.
It's hard to process. It's a lot to process. It takes a long time to process. It takes a lot of energy, and avoidants are just not very good at it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the first things, right? And then another thing I would say about it is if you're with an avoidant partner, and some of you, we ought to maybe do a poll, like how many of you are with partners now or in your most recent relationship that were anxious or avoidant. But if you've been with one, then realizing their pattern is about them and not you can free you from a lot of the pain you might be feeling around it. If you're seeing avoidant behavior, the natural tendency, if you're anxious, is to decide that they're rejecting you and that somehow you're not lovable. And if you'll actually realize that for the most part, anyone who's doing avoidant behavior, it's probably about their own patterning. Now, you may have yours. We're not saying that you don't have yours, but what we're saying is that when they're in their avoidant patterning, it's actually not about you. It's about something that predates you by decades, most likely, right? So you want to distinguish your feelings from your partner's actions, right? So them taking an action like taking a day to themselves or a weekend to themselves, separate that action from the feeling of rejection and realize that action is not necessarily meaning you're being rejected. That action is about them and not about you. Brian's father said something so gorgeous, and it's his kind of motto about life, which is a really beautiful one. I was really struck by it. And I think he said something like, Brian, and maybe you can correct me.
Do
you want to say it? Go ahead. Yeah.
He has the belief that every person, every action, every behavior is either the message, I love you, or it's not for you. It's not. It's irrelevant. It's none of your business. It's like not even about you. So when someone does something that doesn't feel like an I love you to him, he just interprets it as not.
Oh, it's not about me.
Not directed towards him. Yeah. It's like, oh, that's messages for somebody else. When the message is I love you, that's for me. And if it's not I love you, then that's about something else.
Yeah, it's their own kind of patterning. So if you can distinguish that, if you're with an avoidant, then when you notice that they're asking for things like space, or they didn't hold your hand when you reached for it, or they didn't want to make love that night because they weren't in the mood, you're going to distinguish that behavior from that they don't love you. And that is going to give the avoidant, if they're in the relationship, relaxation that that they're not going to be made wrong for their behavior. I've been counseling some avoidants, and what I keep hearing most often is that they feel made wrong all the time
for not loving the right way, or loving enough.
I can't do it right is what I hear. And so if you create an environment that's hostile where they can't do it right, they're not touching your hand, they're not getting back to you quick enough, they're not making love to you as often as you'd like, they're not giving you compliments. It's just, that is a very hostile environment for an avoidant. So my recommendation is to realize that pattern behavior has no bearing on whether they love you or not. It's really actually about their trigger, their pattern. So that's, I think, one of the most helpful things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to realize that as the partner of an avoidant, you might reach your limit. You might reach the limit of what's possible for you, and the realization it's not about them. That's not about you. It's not about you. Can possibly only go so far. There's a point where you can only create so much balance for yourself, and then what do you do? So what do you guys recommend when you're out of resources, as whether you're a secure person, although that's probably less likely, because I imagine a secure person will set boundaries and will say, hey, if you don't want to meet those boundaries, this is not working.
Exactly.
And if it's not working, then let's just make a decision. But an anxious person might have a harder time doing that. So when they try to regulate, they run out of that doesn't work anymore, and they try to realize it's not about them, it's about the other person, and that still doesn't work. Like what do you do?
Yeah.
Well, when you do realize that that the not being enough, the fact that the truth of what's between you, or the truth of what's happening, isn't being enough, I'm back to being the advocate of the avoidant person's independence and freedom. And so I think if you say, hey, I'd like to have a conversation with how we can connect more, and how that connection can be furthering your freedom and independence more, why don't you tell me when it works for you to have that conversation, so that you let the avoidant person decide when, versus demanding their attention now. I also recommend, if you're going to send a message like that, do little hoops, like perhaps give them a written message that says, hey, I have something to ask you when it feels good to you. And you give them a little written note, and then maybe 2 days go by and they haven't said anything, and so you do another written note that says, hey, I still have that thing. If it, so when it feels good to you, I have something to ask. And then another day goes by, and then you might say, in passing, when there's a transition moment, you might say, hey, well, next time you're in a transition moment, I'd like to have that. I'd like to ask you that question, because I want to be a advocate to your independence and your autonomy, and there's something that isn't working for me, but I want to be your partner in how to get what you want, and also some of the things I want.
Yeah, I want to add to this. I like that, and here's what I want to add. I want to talk about your relationships kind of at a base level, having both partners be on the same team, getting your needs met and their needs met. And it's not the total purpose of a relationship. Like, what we like to teach is, like, there's something beyond just having a relationship where it's about getting your needs met. But if you're not at least there, where some of the base needs, like the needs for you to even have a regulated nervous system, right, aren't being met, like safety, security, like enough money in the bank so you're not stressed all the time, like enough sleep, like enough food. There is a baseline sufficiency level for your needs. And if an anxious is always giving the avoidant space and not getting their need for connection met, like that was your question, like what do you do? Because at some point, that's going to break, especially if you're anxious, right? You just can't continue to go without this thing called human affection. They did studies of these little monkeys, and gave them an opportunity to either like go to the monkey that was like a false like wireframe with food, or the monkey that was like soft and cuddly that they could hold. And like 9 times out of 10, the monkey would go towards the one they could.
They'd
like
starve to death.
They'd starve to death before giving up, like being able to kind of go with the fake mama that was like cuddly. So this is a basic human need. And to me, the conversation becomes, I'll actually have couples cross-train. So I'll have the anxious be the advocate and for the freedom of the avoidant. And then I will give the avoidant the assignment, okay, it's your job to be the advocate for the connection of your partner. So it's up to each of you to decide or to have the conversation about what is the sufficiency level. And I use the word sufficiency to begin, because when you have a need and you're above sufficient, you have enough energy to have resilience, right? You're balanced. You can have balance. Now, of course, we have our ideals, right? And we can always strive to have that like ideal. But when we're below sufficiency, it's like stop the press. Nothing works. Like if you are starving and you're not getting enough oxygen, you're not going to work on anything aspirational. You're not going to talk about your feelings, right? You got to get some air. You got to get some food. You know, if you're so tired that your system is shutting down, you know, you got to get some sleep. So there's like a minimum sufficiency level that below which the whole thing falls apart. And I will give couples the homework of finding out what is the sufficiency level, the minimum sufficiency of connection that you need. What does that look like? Is that like, do we see each other once a week, 3 times a week? Do we talk once a day? Is it sleeping together in the bed at night? What is that? What is the minimum, not for your ideal, but what is the minimum for you to feel regulated and normal? And we can work on what's above that. And for the avoidant, I'm like, okay, so what do you need for sufficiency for space? Is it 1 day apart? Is it 3 days apart? Is it having your own hobby that I'm not part of? Is it not having to hold hands every time, but only once? You know, I mean, whatever it is, right? You get your sufficiency level, and then you agree to meet that so that you guys are at least not operating at the kind of red line, mayday, mayday. And when you become advocates and stop the press if you're below sufficiency, and that means if you're an avoidant and they're below sufficient, you suck it up. And you actually are like, you know, I'm wanting space, but actually right now, you're below sufficiency. I'm actually going to show up for you right now. And the table may be turned on the other side. And if we're both advocating for each other getting this need met and staying above sufficiency, then we're actually going to be doing well. So that's one of the first kind of assignments that I'll give.
Most people, I mean, the avoidant pattern, through one lens, the avoidant pattern is being mistaken about how much independence is sufficient.
Yeah, you think you need way more.
Thinking you need a lot more than you do.
Yeah. And
the anxious pattern is being wrong about the amount of connection that you need, that you think you need way more than you need. So when you actually start to examine what's sufficient, you know, I remember for years I had the idea that the minimum sufficient amount of money I could earn was more than I'm earning now, whatever that is. And so I never had this feeling for the first 10 years of my work. I never had the feeling of being sufficient, even though I kept earning more and more and more and more. And then I realized about 1998, I was like, wait a minute, the more strategy is doomed to fail. You can't just do more and more and more. This is dumb. Like, what is actually enough to make me happy, and just do that and then relax about it. So the investigation itself is valuable, but then, as Jennifer suggests, once your partner is your advocate, there's something very relaxing about knowing that someone else, particularly the person who's your biggest threat to your independence and freedom, is actually an advocate for it. And it a little goes a long ways in that kind of scenario.
Yeah, and I think the idea is also to bring those numbers down, not up. You know, so the avoidant isn't like, oh, well, I need to only see you for 1 hour once a week, you know, forever. You know, the avoidant is going to really try to stretch the boundaries, stretch stretch the amount of connection that he can, and lower the amount of like freedom or disconnection or space to the level that is sufficient. So it's really good to actually just experiment with what is that, and to know it and explore it and realize that you're probably exaggerating it because you're nervous that you won't get any. But once you're starting to get the sufficient amount, you'll find, I think as an avoidant, once you're getting sufficient space, you'll actually, if you're even moving a little towards healthy and secure, you'll actually want some of that time, because just because you're avoidant doesn't mean you actually don't have this need called love and connection. I guarantee you do. And just because you're anxious doesn't mean that you also don't have the need for freedom and space. I guarantee that you do. So when you're getting the sufficient amount, you will each balance each other and realize that you'll get the natural ebb and flow of a normal relationship, which will have both.
And I think this is the... Oh, I could hear you guys. I can hear the feedback. So everything you're saying about sufficiency, I think it brings this really key point that I learned just a few months ago, and I wish I would have learned years ago. And that's, if you're insecure, you have a fundamentally a flawed relationship to need. If you're avoidant, you think you don't need anything.
Yeah.
If you're anxious, you think you need a lot.
Yes.
And the problem with that is that means that you have a difficult time meeting your own needs. If you're anxious, you don't believe that your needs are necessarily valid, but you still try to get a lot just in case you don't get it. And if you're avoidant, you don't think your needs matter, and nobody should have any needs because you can just be independent and live off of very, very, very little, because you don't have a lot of emotional needs.
Yes, an underdeveloped right to need, an underdeveloped organismic right to need.
That's right, because your needs were not met in a proper way, or you had experience of that. You developed a flawed relationship to needs. And I discovered this recently because my son would come to me. He's 5 now, so obviously he's got needs, right? And he would come to me, and I would just go, "Oh my God, that is too much, too much, too much." And then I read this article by this woman named Nora Samarin, who wrote this amazing article called "The Opposite of Rape Culture is Nurturance Culture," which speaks a lot to that. And there's another article that she wrote that says, for the men who desperately need autonomy. And what she speaks of is that needs are just a natural way of us connecting with each other. We don't just connect by speaking to each other. We fundamentally connect by the ways we depend on each other. And so if you have a flawed relationship to need, it creates flawed relationships in the process. So in order to become more secure, you have to reestablish a healthy relationship to need. So you have to relearn what it's like to have a valid need for an anxious person, and for an avoidant person to realize that having needs is actually a good thing. It's a useful thing. It's what holds us together. It's like I call that healthy codependence. And you see
or I sometimes call it interdependence. So
interdependence, exactly.
There's codependent, which can be unhealthy. There's independence, which is all the way avoidant, and then there's interdependence, where you're both whole and complete, but depend in synergistic ways on each other. And I think that's what we're actually going for with a healthy developmental right to need.
That's right.
You know, we've got some free videos that we created, so these resources that we want to give all of you, because there's some questions going on in this chat about like, well, how do you do that? Yeah. How do you be that advocate? You know, it's easy if you're secure. And we actually have created a resource that we want to make sure all of you guys get, and we'll make sure we send it to you. Brian's going to tell you how to get it, which helps to re-entrain that right to need.
One of the not just that, but realizing what is that minimum need. If you've never learned, or if you've lost the ability to know what you need and when you need it, then when it's in front of you, you won't know. As an avoidant, for sure. You won't realize. Oh, like people would say, well, what do you need? And I'm like, I don't know.
I don't need anything.
I don't need anything. That's independence, right? You don't need anything. And
you're not avoidant if they get angry. You're like, I don't have any needs. What are you talking about?
Right. Except for space, but it's a need for not being in relationship to somebody who has need. It's pushing all needs away.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a form of need in and of itself, but
it is, which they're dissociated from. They don't even realize that they even need the space is even the need itself, because they can't even see that they're pushing it away. So yeah, absolutely. So one of the best things you can do is recode or develop a healthy adult right to need, and a right to be independent and still belong. Right. And that's another one of those organismic rights that gets underdeveloped, where you merge so you can't be independent, or you avoid and can't feel that you're allowed to be a separate autonomous being. And so these are some of the things that get messed up when you're young, that can be reasserted and made healthy so that you can do this. Because I know, what is it? Is it Michael that said, of course, it's easy to pull off being an advocate when you're secure. Well, so what we're saying is, move in the direction of security by self-regulation and reasserting your right to need and to be separate and still belong, which is, again, a resource we've created to help you do that.
If you're going to unwind the pattern, you're going to have the experience of going against the grain, where you think you don't have a need and you have to act like you do anyway. Yeah. Or you think that no, your needs will never get met and no one cares about them, and so you might as well not ever say them to anyone.
You overgive.
And then you speak anyway. Yeah. So it's a matter of when you have that relationship to need, not trusting the information that's coming about your needs, knowing that the clock is off, and being willing to look outside of that somatic information, which is misleading you, really. And the self-regulation patterns are all about giving you the tools to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right,
well, let's time for maybe one more piece, or let's see. What do we do have a question on the edge. Where do you want to take us, Philippe? You decide.
Let's because we had that conversation. Well, we'll get to that question from Pamela, and connection from Darcy. Connecting question for an avoidant. Let's just go to the avoidant standpoint, right? How do you discover your own emotional pace and connection versus the space, and how to share that to your partner? Mm-hmm. So, you guys think about that. If you're an avoidant person, how do you stay connected to your partner in a way that they know that you still want to do this, and you want them to give you what you need, even though you don't know what you need?
Right. First thing, recognize healthy relationships have an ebb and flow. So this is natural and normal, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to spend time apart. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to spend time together. So first, underline that, really realize that there's nothing wrong when either party wants to spend time either apart or together. And so any blaming or making wrong for that request is really just your patterning. So just first realize that. But the question is really like, how do you kind of figure that out for yourself, and how do you communicate it? I know for me, what I want, if someone is needing space, is to know the end point. So I can almost take anything, like, hey, babe, I need to spend a month in China meditating with in a monastery, but I'll be back, in December, and I'll see you when I get there, when I get home. If I know that there's an end point, then for me, my system relaxes. One of the things I think that gets an anxious pattern is I need space and there's no endpoint. It's like, well, for how long? Like, am I never, ever going to see you again? They catastrophize. It must mean you hate me, don't want to be with me. So one of the ways I think if you're avoidant and you want to communicate it is, one, if you're able, say, I love you. 2, say, I'm not leaving you. I just need some space. And 3, I'll be back, or I'll reconnect with you at this time and space. And make it liberal. Like, if you might be able to connect in a day, maybe you say, in 2 days, and then you can surprise them. But I think if you do those 3 things, that the anxious or even a secure is going to relax and realize that it's all okay.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that.
Add to that, yeah.
Because there's a couple of different scenarios. One is there's a fight, right? And one person's like, oh, I can't deal with this shit anymore, storms off, or just goes way in this funk or quiet, or I don't, I'm going to play some video games, or I'm going to get on email or futz on Facebook, or whatever it is to kind of get away.
Like, I can't talk to you right now. I just can't do this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what you're advocating is creating a healthy practice of declaring a certain amount of time, like a time off, so to speak, which is just to create enough space for first of all, for the intensity of the emotion to go down, and also for the person who's most avoidant to have this space to process the emotion, the intensity of what was going on. And I encourage the person who's not avoidant in the relationship to actually support that, and for there to be a set amount of time, so 1 hour, 2 hours, especially if it's a fight that happens during the evening, or I'll go around the block twice and then I'll come back to the house. And so that is an agreement, and it could be that the person leaving says it, or the person who's staying home asks, or if there's nothing that's said because it's not possible to say, let's set it for 2 hours and let's stay with that agreement. Even if there's a need for more time, come back.
You still need more. Yeah.
That's right. Come back. Tell me you need more. And if you're just dating and you need space to actually create, make it a couple of days, make it a week, and then reconnect. Just so that everybody is on the same page and there's no confusion.
Yeah. And that security of there will be a moment when we reconnect is what the anxious or even a secure wants to know, especially in the heat of an argument when there's been a lot of hurt or pain or disconnection. One of my favorite things that we also have some friends, Annie and Evan, and in a fight, one of the things that they will say to one another, which is beautiful, so I encourage all of you to take this on, is, I love you more than I'm angry at you. And then say whatever it is that they need. And I need this. I love you more than I'm angry. So they don't pretend they're not angry. They don't even downplay whatever they're feeling. But they assert, I love you more than I'm angry. And I just really, this is what I need right now. Right? And so that, to me, is a beautiful practice of, I'm not removing love. I'm just needing space. And an anxious merges those two as the same. And if you can distinguish those for a moment, even if you're angry, sometimes it's hard to say, I love you in a moment when you're really angry. But if you're not ready to just leave that relationship, the truth is, if you're still there, there is love there. Most of the couples that I work with, I can tell, even at their worst, when somebody's really, really angry, there's still love there. It's part of why they're angry and not just, apathy, not just feeling nothing. So your anger is usually a sign of a lot of love, but it's just crippled in fear. So I love you more than I'm angry, and here's what I need. And I promise I'm coming back, and here's when I'm coming. And that, I think, relaxes. I might even making a smaller step, which is, go for a walk, or I'll go for a walk, or you go for a walk, or let's just take a few minutes of space, or an hour or 2 hours, then come back. Let's talk about needs. Yeah.
Because in the moment, needs might not be available.
Yeah, you don't even know.
For beginning this kind of journey of creating a new relationship, new healthy relationship to needs, this could take a long time. This could take a while. You're not just gonna suddenly realize what you need or what you've been not needing forever, and now you have to understand that you actually need it, even if it doesn't feel like you do. That's gonna take more than 1 or 2 fights or 1 or 2 difficult situations. It could take months or years.
And if you're anxious, I recommend noticing how much you enjoy that time off.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually a need you have as well. You just haven't expressing it. So I know for me, when I've experienced an anxious pattern, and I was like, oh, I really don't want to go away. I don't want this time apart. We want to spend all this time together, but you're not available, and then she's not available, and I'm like, this is actually fun. I'm like relaxed. I like kicking it, doing some things for me.
See?
And then afterwards, I was like, oh, wait a minute, that was great. You know, whether it's in the fight or just to have an agreement about, you know, friends of ours have an agreement that 4 days a month, they're married with a child, but 4 days a month he's out of the house, gone, not to be disturbed, don't call him. And so, you know, what she discovered is she loves those 4 days. They're fantastic. So just if you're the anxious, notice that you actually need the same thing. You're just agreeing that it's the avoidance need that you're meeting at that time, but really you both need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a. Oh, I'll scratch that. I'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah, I think Michael says if the anxious one is more aware, should they be asking the avoidant if they are the ones needing space? And
right.
I think that's a really nice comment. You know, if you're aware that that's what your partner needs, going ahead and being proactive and saying, oh, hey, do you need to take, you know, to go just take a shower and come back? Or, you know, Brian, that's how he does it. If we get in a fight, he's like, I just need a shower. And that's like where he can be alone, you know?
Thing, and you can have fun. Oh yeah, what I wanted to say is the idea of autonomy is that somebody has all their needs met such that they feel like they can do anything in the world, right? So if you meet somebody's, if somebody has needs and you can meet them, they're going to automatically become more secure. That's just the way it works. When somebody has all their needs met, they feel more secure, right? Whether they have enough sleep or enough food, but emotionally it totally works as well. And it's counterintuitive because we think, oh, this person's needy. If I meet their need, they're going to want more and more and more and more, and it's never going to stop. But the reality, and you've mentioned this, they don't need as much as they think.
Yes.
Or they don't think they need anything, and they actually need a little bit for an avoidant.
They're both wrong about it, and if they actually figure it out where their sufficiency is, then they're going to be way healthier.
That's right. And then they're going to be actually more present in a relationship. So if you're an avoidant and you realize that your partner needs some space because you know they're avoidant, and maybe and you don't realize you have needs, which is just what you were talking about. You don't realize you need some space, but actually it's really good for you. You get to feel yourself more. You get to actually be in your own space, own up to your own needs, take care of yourself. That's a very common thing for anxious people to do. Take care of yourself. I mean, same thing for avoidance, but they do it in a different way, and they need to learn it from the other end. But the point is that learning to fulfill your own needs is difficult at first, so having somebody else help you with it by fulfilling them for you allows you to feel more secure, and then you get to think straight emotionally, and you get to be like, wow, I really needed that. Now I can advocate for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the assignment of being the advocate for each other.
That's right.
In the area that you each need to grow, and that way you're actually really evolving and helping each other heal.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You know, as the anxious, I'm actually learning how to give the avoidant freedom, and I'm actually learning about my own need for freedom and space. And as the avoidant, if I'm the avoidant, I'm learning about you know, my needs and the connection I need, and actually developing and realizing what, you know, how much of that I need, while I'm each learning the one that, you know, the other. So it's really healthy. So it's one of the best things.
I call that reparenting. I believe that in relationships, both partners are reparenting each other. Mm-hmm. There's always, you know, one person's the adult reparenting the 5-year-old, and then there's other engagements in the same relationship where the opposite happens. Mm-hmm. You know, this is often you're in this engagement with someone, with the other person, and you're like, wow, they feel so young. But if you can see them as this kind of younger person that just has needs that need to be met, and you can meet them, the result is always, or if they can embody these, they can integrate these needs well enough, then they're going to become more secure. And that's how you create balance in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
one thing oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, you know, you brought up earlier conflict, and we've been talking a lot about anxious and avoidant, and how it works in kind of the natural dance. And then when it reaches this pinnacle, when it reaches this, like, the pattern kind of spins and spins and spins to a breaking point, that's when you have conflict. And one thing that we think you really need to have to make any relationship lasting and joyful is a really awesome conflict resolution process, which is exactly what we do in the workshop that we were going to talk about. Is it all right with you if we talk a little bit about the workshop and what we're
Absolutely.
offering?
I think this is a good point to do it.
Yeah, we want to invite everybody to something really special. That's a really opportunity to have both Brian and I in a room, and a couple other relationship experts, Annie Lala and Eben Pagan, are also going to be there as guests. And so, yeah, we just kind of want to give you both access to these resources we've talked about, plus a special invitation and a discount to an event we're doing.
So just imagine coming to an island in the San Francisco Bay, Treasure Island, if you're already here, for a deeply transformative exercise in how to, spending a day or two with us and really getting our individual attention on the aspects of your relationship and love life that matter most to you. And now imagine like having the stage set for you in the most gentle and respectful way for you and your partner to really permanently resolve your biggest recurring conflict, whether it has the anxious and avoidant patterning or it could be something else. And doing that without getting triggered. And this is really something we've mastered. One past participant said he just couldn't believe it. He said, this is a quote, "We dove in and actually solved the most important issue of our whole relationship. We've been married for years now, and I just assumed we weren't ever going to solve it." I was crying my eyes out because I heard her say and acknowledge the things that I didn't even think she had any idea about. It was amazing. And I just talked to this guy like last week.
Literally just texted you, right?
And this has been months and months since the retreat, I think, and months and months in any case. And I said, so I wanted to check in on this big issue that you worked on. And he said, it's absolutely solved. It's permanently resolved. We don't fight about it. He said that resolution has revealed some other stuff that we're working on, but it definitely feels like a level up because we're not in that old conversation anymore.
Yeah, so it's permanently resolved. So, it's something that we've been really innovating in the space is how do we help both single people learn the relational skills to resolve those patterns permanently, and how do we help couples in that interplay, in that more complex dynamic back and forth, actually up-level the way that they're talking with practices that have them really resolve it. So we're going to do that in this 3 days together, is really rewriting your relational DNA. And so, one problem that we see with relationships is that we try to solve our hardest conflicts while we're triggered.
Yeah.
And that's like that's when we're trying to fix it, right? And we won't even let go of it. We're like, you're at your worst, you have the least resources, and there you are trying to resolve your fight in this triggered state, and you have no resources to act like a grown-up at all. And then at this Evolving Love event, and that's what we're calling it, Evolving Love, is that we create a space of fun and lightness and caring. And from that space where we add more resources to you, anything is possible. And, several couples in our last retreat were actually giggling and laughing as they were talking about topics that they actually, had as taboo in their relationship. And so, so we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to show you how to resolve conflicts that works and feel great. And almost everybody from our last event said that they were actually able to solve their biggest conflict and felt that it wouldn't even come up again. And so that's not bad for just a couple days.
Yeah, because we've developed a system for resolving conflict that feels good to everybody, where everybody's needs are actually met, where the process is uplifting. And, imagine you have like an angel and a devil inside of you when it comes to your relationship, like on the shoulder, and how you relate to your romantic partner. And, at the Evolving Love workshop, you get to really let the angel side of you be in charge. And we get to soothe and relax the fears and concerns that lead to the devil side, so it doesn't have to come out so destructively. Because if the angel was in charge of how you'd handle your conflict, for example, you'd do it very differently. And so we show you how to do that.
Yeah, and you've got us and two other relationship experts, and we may not ever have all four of us together in one room again.
Yes,
it just happened that they were in town during this event, and just imagine having four people that have devoted their lives to helping people transcend and evolve the way they love and to rewrite these patterns, really taking a look and helping you see the things you're not able to see because you're in it. Right? Having that outside perspective can be the difference between a fight you're going to have for the next several decades, not even just in that relationship, but if you end that one and go to the next one, right? So, or really resolving it permanently actually repatterning yourself so that it doesn't become the thing that's your Achilles heel. So that's really what we're about, really adding to the field. I mean, we have therapists that have come in, many who've said that there's nothing like this work. Please, license us, tell us how to do this, because even all of the education I had never gave me the tools that I got from just this workshop. So thank you for that. And that was just coming from people that are in the business. So in the workshop, you're going to learn things like 3 evolutionary conversations that will raise the consciousness of your relationship. So you want to know what those conversations are. Come and learn and how to have them with yourselves and with the people that you're dating and the people that you're in your relationships with. You're going to learn more about what to do when your partner triggers you and how to de-escalate without giving up your truth. Right. So this isn't a workshop about downplaying and compromising and pretending everything's okay. We are not afraid of dealing with intensity. We are not conflict averse. We actually help you to de-escalate and stand for who you are and what is true. So those aren't in conflict in the way that we do it. And then we'll help you design your ideal love story and practice embodying it together with your partner. Resolving once and for all your most painful recurring pattern. In fact, we'll ask you in preparation for the event to talk about what is, the 1 to 3 most painful recurring patterns that you have, and then let's use this to actually go through and resolve those. We'll help you also detect your partner's highest evolutionary path and learn how to guide them to it. We want to raise the consciousness of your relationship so that it's beyond just getting our needs met, which is kind of level 1, but it's now into how do we actually help each other evolve into the best versions of ourselves, and how do we actually help each other guide ourselves along the path and guide our partners along the path. And there are ways that can be taught that just aren't taught. Like we don't get educated about how to do relationship rights. It's just no wonder that smart, conscious people have difficulties. So that's really what we're going to do. So that's the workshop.
Yeah. And
if you look at the right, you'll see a way to get access to it. I'm going to put it out there so that you can see this button here.
And the workshop really is much more than just the 2-day immersion. It actually begins with something called the love profile, which many people have just raved about, said that it was worth the price of the whole thing. And it's a transformational experience in itself. It's when you get feedback from your friends, community, even from ex-lovers, if you are courageous enough to do that, which we really recommend you do, about some of the blind spots that you have in your love patterning and how to transcend those. So you start with the love profile. You get the 2-day deep dive where there's lots of practice time with your partner if you're in a relationship. There's also one of the events is a singles event. So the Friday is a singles event. So if you don't have a partner, you come to that and you get lots of practice with the comfort of strangers. And we both give you really focused one-on-one guidance to make sure that you see your blind spot and get to that next other side of it. And there's also live exercises and workbook where you can learn and practice all the conversations and frameworks and step-by-step practices. We actually have a weekly, monthly, and daily set of rituals for maintaining healthy, awesome, extraordinary relationships. And not only you get that workbook, but you get an email every week with a reminder of one of them to do, which a lot of people said has totally helped them keep it alive. And that email sequence lasts all year. So it can, always be a part. You get a little email. It's like, hey, here's a thing you can do today that's going to spruce up your relationship.
And I don't know, those of you on that know Philippe and are here because of him, I think you're going to like this other piece. Is we've created the user's guide to monogamy and non-monogamy, which is a guide that we've written about how to keep your sex life hot and drama-free. And so we're going to probably talk about it a little bit in the workshop, but even, we'll see how far we get through it, but we're going to give that to you. And it's a really solid guide about how to do that, whether you're monogamous or non-monogamous. We are agnostic. We like all relationship structures and types. And, we've been around the block enough to know like what actually works in each of those. So if that's a particular topic of yours, then I imagine you're going to love that part.
Yep. And if you were going to pay us for our coaching rate to get all of this kind of personalized attention, you'd be paying $7,500 or more, and it might take you 5 or 6 months. And it would be worth it, by the way, because there's no better investment than you can make in the quality of your life than to improve the quality of your love. It really changes everything. But instead of taking 5 or 6 years of traditional therapy, if you're lucky, or 5 or 6 months of our kind of coaching, you can have this kind of a shift really in a couple of days. And it's 2 days for couples and 1 for singles. The price for couples is $595 per person for 2 days, less than $600. And the singles workshop is only $495 for 1 day.
Yes.
The workshop is November 4th for singles and 5th and 6th for couples. So November 4th is a Friday, that's for singles, and Saturday and Sunday is for couples. And that's coming up pretty soon, just a couple weeks now. Couples coaches and therapists and counselors have all been doing our workshops. They've been reaching out to us to learn about what we're doing. In fact, one of them who was a professional couples counselor, this is what she had to say after doing the last workshop. She said, "I feel like I've been waiting for this information my whole life. My lens of what a relationship can be has widened and expanded. I now have a definition and knowing of what an extraordinary and evolutionary relationship looks like and feels like. And I know the way I do relationship and the way I work with my clients is forever changed." And that is the kind of change that we want for you.
And I just want to add something. You guys said something about that this is a shift, and I think that's really, you're not saying you're going to replace 5 or 6 years of therapy. You're creating a shift that is going to become more and more integrated with time. So it's like cracking you open, and the crack becomes bigger and bigger, and you see more and more what's inside. And that's a process, and it often takes time. And so different people will go at different speed. But I think the point is that this is an opportunity to get together with a big group of people doing the same work and meeting friends, making friends. And also being well. So one of the things that when I coach people, I say, it's one thing to get coaching, but you can't learn, you can't grow unless you're part of a peer group and you're part of a community. So to go to a class like this not only gives you the coaching, but it also gives you the community, it gives you the peer group, so that you can relate to each other and find out, like, where you at, what did you figure out, what did I figure, we figured this out, this is how we do it, and then that follows you over time. And it's different than one-on-one coaching, because one-on-one coaching is just you and the coach. And if you talk to your friends, they're like, "What are you doing?" Or, "We can't talk about it because it was one-on-one coaching and it's private or it's confidential." So there's really a huge advantage to doing group work like this. And it's been happening in psychotherapy for a long time, and this is a perfect example of something that will create a shift in your life.
Yeah, well, there's a real power in that group dynamic when you're surrounded in a room of people that are deep into the question, how do I evolve the way I love? How do we collectively evolve the way that we love? And you're in that field, and you're realizing that your problems are the same as their problems, and you're watching, even if it's not you up there.
Yeah.
You're watching
validates
us. You're going to see yourself in everybody there, and so it's so powerful, and it's so reinforcing, to have the kind of community around you to go through this experience. It's a really special time, and we don't do this very often. So it's rare. So if you can make yourself available for a few $100s, we've done retreats for thousands and thousands of dollars. So that we made this one super accessible, so that there's just no one that can't really access it. We've done that, and we're going to offer all of you, if you take us up on this, we're going to give you a $100 discount on it if you'll sign up between now and, let's say, midnight tomorrow. There's a discount code that is early lover 16. Early lover 16. So if you click the button on your right and fill in the discount code, then you'll be able to get just an additional $100 off. It's only a few $100s as it is, so it's a sizable discount. Given that, so we want to see you guys there. We want to evolve the way we're all loving, and so come join us. And let's make sure they get these free resources as well.
Sure.
Which we were promising, which are all about really becoming more securely attached. We've developed some meditations and really a 5-week practice that we recommend. So you want to tell them how they can get that?
Sure. So the meditations are really cool because there's one for anxious and there's one for avoidant. And then there's the maintenance one. And the anxious and the avoidant one, they're meant to be taken in the moment when you're having that frustrating feeling around your needs. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, my needs aren't going to be met, or oh, I don't have any needs, or they're crowding me.
Or if you're avoidant, when you start to feel like you have no needs or you don't want anything.
Yeah, or they're just like, why are they in my space? Why are they crowding me? When you start to feel that, or you're anxious and you're like, how come they don't love me? In that moment, you get out your phone and you hit play on one of these things, put in your headphones, and in 8 to 10 minutes, you're going to be completely self-regulated. And to the tone of Jennifer's beautiful voice, walking you through a meditation to help you locate your proper relationship to needs.
Yeah, so then to help heal some of those underdeveloped things. And it combines music, sound, some imagery that we've created that's designed to create that balance, that somatic and emotional balance, along with the organismic rights and redeveloping those through some repatterning language that we're helping to kind of incept, like psychoactive seed, so that it can grow. So how do they get them?
Yeah. So to get this, you just want to text me. And my phone number is 415.
I'm going to type it.
810 9769. We're going to type it into the chat right now. 415-810-9769. Just text me and text me your email address, your name, and the city you live in. 1, 2, 3.
Wow, so people get to call you too?
Renee,
no, just text.
Do not call me.
Include the word, what is it, attached, your name and your email, and we'll send them to you.
And your city.
Oh, and your city, yeah.
So, if you call me, you'll hear my voicemail, which says, I don't answer the phone and I don't check these voicemails. So just text me. But it is my private phone number, and I'll just send it to you right away. I'll text you back with the link.
And for those of you that are international, we had some internationals who are like, we don't want to have to call an international number. Just send us an email and ask for the same. Say, hey, I was on your webinar. Send me those resources. So you can, and all you'd have to do is respond to any of the reminders you got about this webinar, or text Brian the word attached, your name and your email, to 810-9769, and we'll make sure that you get those free resources. Take us up on both of those things. Come to the event and get these resources. We'd love to have you have them, just for the fact that you listened and were present.
And Michael wants to know how to sign up for both. Just do the process twice. Click the link, sign up for one, click the link again, sign up for the other.
Oh, well, if you do the singles one, Michael, then it'll ask you if you want to come to all 3 days. And we highly recommend all 3. Day 1 is inner work. Right? So this is why it doesn't matter if you're a single or a couple. You're going to go dive very deeply into the personal inner identity level work. Days 2 and 3 are the interpersonal work, right? So working with partners, and you don't have to bring your partner, but you're going to be working on some of the issues that come up interpersonally. Mm-hmm. So yes, come to all 3 or select one or the other. Either way, we'd love to have you. And it's in San Francisco, November 4th to 6th. Maybe we'll even entice Philippe and maybe even Padgett to come. I've been, excited to perhaps have them there, but we'll see. Let's type in the email address, Brian and Jennifer at californialeadership.com, or text us for the resources.
Okay. Here's another thing for people who are watching the replay.
Yep.
Are we going to give them a little bit if they tell if they
tomorrow midnight?
Right, but what if they watch the replay in 2 days and of course they don't know that there's a deadline because they're not watching it right now? So
I don't know, you snooze, you lose. They may not get the $100. If they plead, we'll see. Maybe for the right case, I may extend it. But we really like to reward people that are in action. They hear about something, they show up, and they act, and that's why. We give people a little extra oomph. It lets us plan easier. To tell you the truth, it's like if we know how many seats and how many lunches and what to tell the caterer, it's just so much easier for us than having you wait to the last minute. So we want to reward you by making our lives easier by taking action before tomorrow at midnight.
Good.
So that's it. So thank you guys. This was so much fun, Philippe. I'm so glad to do this.
Should we do a few questions? Yeah, thank you.
We can do some questions.
Amazing. So if you want to ask any questions, I mean, I know there's, in the initial invite, there was a number of points. We may have covered some of them. We may have not covered some of them. So if you ask a question earlier, you want to ask it again because you're still there, please do so in the chat. So we can do our best to answer 2 or 3. And it's already been 90 minutes, so it's a long time. Attention span, 90 minutes to 2 hours max. People might be hungry. Maybe they're eating in their pajamas right now. I don't know. So if you have any questions, we're going to wait for just a minute.
One from Melissa, maybe. I get anxious in the beginning of relationships until I get to know them more. And then I become more settled and confident, solid, and I can trust the process. So for her, it's more of a comment like the beginning is anxious and then she settles in and gets confident. And I think that's a great pattern. I think that's a movement in the right direction, Melissa. So I love seeing that. A lot of people have the opposite, where at the beginning everything's great, and then over time they get a little bit more anxious and nervous. So that you're doing it that way is just a really good sign. I just want to say, good for you.
One thing I'll add is that, and it's possible that's what's going on from Melissa. I can't tell from her comment. Is so your attachment style and the way you behave around it, kind of you grew up with it, and it's automatic, right? So when you start doing the practices like what you guys are recommending, and any sort of practice that relates to becoming more secure, it's going to start out as something that feels like a new dance that you've never done before. You're like, okay, which step, which foot, my hand, how do I put my body? And eventually you're going to start to learn it almost as a skill. Not almost, it will become a skill. It's something that you become more and more skilled at. And as you become more and more skilled at, it's going to be you're going to be more graceful at it. So, and I'm talking about emotional grace, graceful grace around how to lean out if you're normally leaning out, to lean in if you normally lean out, how to move together with your partner in a way that actually allows both of you to dance in the most authentic and the most fulfilled way. But that takes time, right? And then as you see a lot of dancers, after they've done it for a long time, it's almost like it's integrated inside of them. And that does not happen just in a minute. That can take years. So it goes from, there's a particular way to call it, right? Unconscious competence to conscious competence to, I don't remember the exact words, but for me, I call it, you just don't know anything, and you're learning as a skill. Eventually that skill becomes something that's more of an integrated quality inside of you. And security or becoming secure is something that might take such a long time that eventually you will learn to automatically do it, but it will be a conscious thing for quite some time. And so to understand that, you might need to consciously compensate or counteract the way your compass is pointing or the way your body is leaning. And you might have to do that for quite some time until you don't even need to think about it. And that's when it becomes unconscious. That's when it becomes automatic. And that's when you can say, wow, I'm secure now. I mean, yeah, this person did what they did, and wow, that didn't even throw me. Or it threw me, but I recovered. And I didn't have to do a lot of work, a lot of conscious work about it. So it's good to understand that these things take time. If it takes you 2 months, by all means, awesome. But it's not so surprising that it takes 3 to 5 years to really grow a new attachment style, so to speak.
Well, I think we're a little bit over time. I think we should.
I think we'll wrap up.
This was so fun to be here with you, Philippe.
Yeah, thank you for
awesome.
a juicy conversation. Catch y'all on the flip side. Come find us. Really take advantage of those resources. Let us know how that goes for you, and then come see us in San Francisco for a few days. That'll rewrite and change your life. There's an amazing opportunity to get 4 of us together, laser guiding you. So let us do that. If you're available that weekend, we'd love to have you. Have a wonderful rest of your night or day whenever you happen to be watching this. And we hope to see more of you soon. Have a great day.
And before you cancel, I'm going to put a link, which is a number of resources. Some of the books you've sent me before on attachment theory.
Yeah.
Some links to some articles. There's one about attachment theory versus sex and sexual relationships.
Fabulous.
Sexuality. So I'm just sending a link to a Google Doc where I've put a bunch of resources.
Great. Email those to everybody too, if you don't.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we can look at it, clean it up. Right now, it's not cleaned up. This is just my personal, but I think it's going to be useful for people who want to, you know, some people might already know about the book Attached, but there's other books that go way deeper into it and will give much more information. But I think ultimately you can read any book you want, but the real work happens out in the field. And I think your class is the perfect opportunity to get started down that path.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Philippe.
Thank you, Philippe.
Yeah. Have a great night, all you guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.